our main story today, which revolves around liquidity in the network. I want to ask the community listening live too. There's a little comment button at the bottom right of the spaces for people listening live. The question I asked the community is like, let me just actually pull it up and read what I asked. I'm trying to remember, but I literally have the link right here. So I asked, so it's clear to me that bringing in outside liquidity into the Hedera ecosystem is paramount importance. What things will accelerate this and what is holding us back? And I'm interested to hear thoughts from people listening live. I'll read those out too. But basically, lots of people left responses. I want to talk about them. This is less a story of me kind of like regurgitating news or whatever. And this is more about just elevating voices in the Hedera community on a really, 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 really important topic. And I think it's important to keep in mind that in general, Hedera is best for enterprises, but not only for enterprises. I think that's a point that's being brought up again and again, which is there's this kind of idea out there that's been out there for a little bit that Hedera by its nature is like only for enterprises, but that's really never been true. And even from the beginning, Lehman Baird's saying, it's an enterprise grade network, but anyone can use it, right? Same as if you have something that's military grade, it doesn't mean that, people can't use it. Anyone can't use it. And I think the unique quality of Hedera is it's also, the most affordable, which is very interesting. But let's dive into it here. Let's dive into some of these responses because it's really interesting to me. So HBAR Joe, and for folks watching the video version, you'll be able to kind of see these responses and read them yourself. And the thread will be on hashgraph.news. But HBAR Joe says, couldn't a huge part of the problem be as simple as access? If more HTS tokens had listings on the bigger central exchanges, I believe people would give those products a good look. Most people are adverse to leaving their comfort zone. We need to put the products into their space. And that's a great point. That's a big one you'll see coming up is central exchange listings. And there's an argument to be made of a direct correlation between the price of an asset and the amount of trading pairs that are on exchanges, right? If you look at, any of the other kind of altcoins like Ethereum or Cardano or Solana or Algorand or whatever it might be, they just have more trading pairs and they just have a, higher price relatively to HBAR. So there's a strong argument to be made for, more trading pairs. Orbis86 says more big validators. And I agree. And what I take away from that is community nodes. That's a huge thing that we're missing. And it's it's going to take a few steps to get there, if folks recall, it's like there are these different stages. There's going to be permissioned nodes, then there'll be community nodes, and then there'll be permissionless nodes, right? And then anonymous nodes. And so it's this, as Hedera puts it, pathway to decentralization. And so that's a big thing is community nodes. And it's important because it's important for two reasons. One is it's going to help the network scale. Wouldn't it be exciting to see to stake your HBAR to a node that isn't IBM or Google or Boeing or whatever, but is a Hedera community project, right? That'd be pretty exciting. But on the other side is a key criticism of Hedera has always been the fact that the only validators or nodes that operate the network and allow consensus to function are major organizations. And that turns off quite a few people. And so with the introduction of community nodes, we'll start to see a lot of those criticisms die down. It'll be the exact same as it happened with open source, right? If folks recall, Hedera was not always open source. Now it's open source. And that was a key criticism. Most notably, Charles Hoskins, founder of Cardano, he said, I won't read the white paper for Hashgraph because it's patented. It's not open source. I won't touch it. And, I think that was the opinion of quite a few people. And so there are similar opinions that Hedera isn't worth checking out because it doesn't have more validators. And you can make arguments on both sides. We can split hairs and talk about the merit of those arguments and, the pathway to decentralization and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is it would be great to have community nodes. So that's a great point from Orbis. Tommy, he says more central exchange listings, more central exchange and decentralized exchange trading pairs with HBAR, more bridges, and more multi-chain dexes. So that is really, really important. I don't think it can be emphasized enough. I think if I was forced to pick one thing, if I was at the helm of Hedera and I could only do one thing to grow the network, it would probably be accessibility, like trading pairs. But it's hard to know how that exactly plays out, what's needed to make that happen. Like we've heard many times, it can cost X million of dollars to get listed in Coinbase or whatever it might be. There's wheels that got to get greased. It's a crazy world out there. It's a silly place. But we need it. We need those listings. And I think that's a great call out. Again, Cosmic says, and Cosmic was listening earlier. Shout out to Cosmic. Hedera community member says, to attract new users, Hedera needs a degen moment, as its current stability lacks the volatility that draws people seeking financial opportunities in the crypto space. It's that simple. And that's true. When you look at, the Hedera charts, it can sometimes feel a little bit like a stable coin. Like if you really zoom out, like what's the first thing, right? What's the first thing people are going to do when they load up the HBAR charts and they're like, I want to get into this thing? What's the first thing they do? Well, they go to, all-time charts. What's the history of this asset? And the HBAR charts are crazy. We have the HBAR charts burned into our brains at this point. We close our eyes at night and we see it. And it's this big flat desert of, between 1 cent and 5 cents. And then shaboom, February 2021, we go from literally 3 cents to 40 cents. Right. And then we go back down and then we go back up and we go back down. And it's very exciting. And it attracted a lot of attention, and volume would reach $1 billion in one day. Sometimes it was crazy. And then we're back down. And, now since June 2022 until now, it's like we're really ranging, between 4 cents and 10 cents. It's not really that exciting. And that's a great point. We need that kind of wacky price action on HBAR. And so this is where the conversation surrounding meme coins and stuff like that gets very interesting, because the ecosystem does offer that in a limited capacity with the meme coin space, which is very exciting for people. And so you kind of look at this stuff, and you look at HBAR, you look at the price action of HBAR, and it's just not really that exciting right now. And it just depends on how you look at it. And again, there's two main ways to look at it, right? You can look at it as like a knowledgeable, deep value investor and go, well, clearly, HBAR is ranging and the fundamentals are on the up and up. And I read the Masari crypto report, and the network is going up in different metrics, and it's consolidating and it's building, and there's a golden cross, and the MACD is over, their RSI is oversold or whatever. So there's those people that do see the value and opportunity in this and that. But the majority of people just want to see big green candles and, throw money into it. So they're definitely, when someone says, Hedera's quote degen moment, we had one, right? And it was funny because we had one before we even had any tokens, NFTs or meme coins or anything on the network. Now we do. let's see here. So Tatsuyaki says, we need to collaborate with other chains publicly in multiple forms, from integrations to spaces, and then we need to communicate value effectively. So that's a great point too. It goes back to what Lehman Baird was saying at Davos, which is, the end of us will be tribalism. We look at the partnerships that Swirls Labs and the DREC Alliance is forming with Dalgarand and potentially, Cardano and Ripple and those different types of things. And it's very exciting. And that's all part of it. Is you want to build bridges for liquidity, and you also want to build bridges for people. There's two sides to it. It's like you got to bring the money in for sure, but you also have to bring the people. And those are two separate operations sometimes. I think that No Man's Internet, shout out, very regular listener to the show, says easy and affordable access to stables, including HUSDC. And this is a big point of conversation for the community is, stable coins, the fact that we have, USDC minted natively on Hedera and that it is underutilized and undercapitalized. And I think that that's also a huge topic and opportunity for the ecosystem. So I think that's really important. Lord Crypto Mang says we need more builders, more DEXs, derivatives, and lending protocols, etc. More places for people to degen and have fun in crypto. I still play on Phantom and AVAX over there. We're spoiled for choice. I think it's coming though. And they bring up a specific example of serial finance, which I'll talk about just a little bit later on the show. But that's also a great point is we need those bridges and we need that liquidity coming in, but also a big part of this is like, what do you do when you get here? What DeFi products do you have? People want lending, people want borrowing. We don't quite have those things yet. We need retail oracles. There's certain pieces that we need here. So that's also an angle to look at it from. Really, really great points. CryptoLogic says liquidity will come as adoption ramps up, as the market moves away from hype and into retail life use cases. More ways to make life-changing money, airdrops, ICOs, etc. As council members announced, and live, that brings hype. For example, Tesla or NVIDIA. I mean, that's the other side to this too is this community member brings up a great point too is, I think that the Hedera community collectively is like, well, what are you expecting? A governing council member announcement to pump the price? It's not going to happen, right? It is not going to happen. We get Hitachi, we get Dell Technologies, we get whatever. I think there was a bit of a pump on Google being added and stuff like that. But in general, people are like, but again, the examples that they bring up, right? Tesla, NVIDIA, we've heard Apple, we've heard Amazon, we've heard all sorts of different companies potentially being added to the governing council. And there is a case to be made for that. What if NVIDIA was added? What if, one of those very retail focused companies are added to the council? Remember, like companies like Hitachi and Kofra and IBM and stuff, these are not generally consumer facing companies. It's not something people generally will get like super excited about. It's stuff that, HBARbarians will get excited about. But you think about a company, again, like Tesla or like something like that. And yeah, that would probably have a big impact and generate a lot of awareness. So I don't think we totally throw out the possibility of governing council member additions bringing attention to the network. But it would have to be a very particular one. So those are great points. Blockfisher says, here are a couple of things missing. There needs to be real world asset marketplace. I should be able to buy a vintage shirt or hat from someone in the community and pay USDC. We need a new site that takes microtransactions. Please, someone resurrect the daily timestamp. That's so funny. That's a really deep track for the Hedera community. There was this website back, feels like 40 years ago. There was a news website on Hedera where like you would do micropayments to read news stories and stuff like that. So that's another thing is lots of like innovative products, lots of things for people to do. That's what it's all about. People, like when people come over here and they get these assets, these NFTs, these tokens, HBAR, giving them stuff to do with it is important. The the goal here is to shorten the amount of time between someone learning about Hedera and then having a positive experience on the network. That's what this is all about, is how quickly can that happen? GoTribal.HBAR says, a real world asset and crypto exchange built on Hedera. Buying that real world asset and pay a few play coins on Hedera wallet goes a long way. People only need to experience the low fees, security, and finality to understand that the hype is real. And again, that goes to my point of what I'm saying is like, you got to have those experiences, and seeing, real world assets being brought up. That's extremely interesting, because that gets even closer to people's real world lives. And just on the periphery of this, a use case that I keep bringing up on the show, probably too much, is coupons. I mean, the new coupon standard is very exciting. We talked about the recent news that the Toshiba, right, the number one point of sales hardware system, if you go to a store and you check out at the counter, that's probably happening on a Toshiba point of sale system. Toshiba has been, and I think already has integrated the new coupon standard, leveraging Hedera into their point of sale system. So there's going to be also a flood of those different types of use cases. And those are exciting because they kind of touch in that zone that Lehman will mention a lot, which is people will use the network without realizing it. And so that's also another angle to look at it from, is like improving people's lives, bringing value to the marketplace without people understanding or knowing that it's Hedera is also very interesting, because it changes the way people think. You think about, one of your parents going out and, using a coupon and, saving some money on milk, and just, oh, this is so much better than it used to be. Or even people trying to transfer money between their banks or different things like that. And knowing that, like, hey, this is a network you can actually buy a little piece of. You can buy a little piece of this network. You could change it to, do something new if you wanted to. Like, it's just a really interesting world we're heading into. Also too, Laserhands said the governing council is rammed with Fortune 500 companies, some of which are the best and most profitable tech companies in the world. It's not like the ecosystem should be short of liquidity at all by any means. Things take time. I think that's another thing that's brought up, is when we talk about liquidity, it's like, well, my God, like liquidity. I mean, we've got Google, we've got IBM. And, I think, again, it's worth remembering that what we're talking about is people actually moving their money from their bank accounts into the Hedera ecosystem. That's really what we're talking about. And the multitudes of different paths and pitfalls and challenges that you have to go through and travel through to, get your money into the network. It's still not super easy. And I think the problem that a lot of people speak to when we talk about liquidity is the fact that there is a lot of liquidity that wants to get into the ecosystem. That's the other part of this too, is there's a lot of money that wants to get into the Hedera ecosystem that just, there are barriers, there are blockers, and those need to be removed. That's the whole other side to this. I get messages, I'm sure projects get messages about, hey, where can I buy HBAR? I can't get it on, Coinbase where I live, or there's no exchanges that have it where I live, or, I've got a bunch of this asset and I want to port it to Hedera. And so again, like, it's not just about raising awareness so people go, oh, this is great, I'm going to move my money there. It's like, it's also about the fact that there are people already looking to dive in, and it's just difficult. So there are as well barriers to remove. Dom James also on this thread brings up a great point. We need a killer use case. If Hedera doesn't bust a move in 2024, we may have a big problem. The technology is superior, but honestly, that doesn't matter if not enough eyes are on it. And this goes back to something I thought was interesting from last week, which was Shane, the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, he talks about this cornerstone deal, which he describes as, a very large scale consumer facing use case that leverages Hedera. and incubating those types of things. And you can look at some existing ones we have being that. Karate Combat has a strong case to be made that it could be that cornerstone deal. We don't know, but I think that there's definitely merit to that. We do need something that is built inside of our ecosystem that brings value to millions of people, right? It's not just about bringing resources and ideas and teams and products from outside of Hedera into Hedera. It's also about groundbreaking things emanating from the ecosystem. And so like, that's a really powerful thing, is like, what if we had a really killer startup or application or project that touched the lives of so many different people in a crazy way, that was consumer facing, right? That wasn't, international bank remittances or CBDs or supply chain carbon offsetting or this or that, that was something very direct for people that improve their lives at a large scale. It's like, that is, I think, a big focus for, the HBAR Foundation, Hedera's world. I mean, it's gotta be the focus of everybody in Web3, because we just haven't really, no one's really had that yet. I mean, there are platforms that, millions of people use, but even things like, the Starbucks NFTs or different things like that. It's not something that can penetrate the consciousness of the global or even just American consumer base. It's not something that's top of mind for regular people. So it's really interesting, very interesting stuff. Continuing on with some of the responses here. This is great to read these through. Definitely marketing. Dennis V says, outside of our community, I don't see HBAR being advertised. And I think that's also another like interesting topic to bring up is, Hedera is just not going to advertise HBAR. They're not going to promote HBAR. It's well known that, Hedera as an organization, like people at Hedera, like are very restricted in the different types of things they can engage with and things that they can do. The Hedera account there's a lot of red tape. And again, I think that it's a very conservative approach. I think it's something that was very appealing for a lot of original investors, but it is what it is. Hedera, you're not going to see Hedera promoting HBAR. It's just not going to happen, at least in the short or medium term. But yeah, you're just not going to see that until there's some drastic change to regulations or something like that. The people who need to promote HBAR is, the foundation, and, the other associations and organizations that are tasked with ecosystem growth. But really the HBAR Foundation is kind of the tip of the spear for that kind of stuff. So they're the ones that are responsible for exchange listings. They're the ones that are tracking those different growth metrics and everything. So that's really important. It all ties back. And again, when we talk about awareness and different things like that, like what's the best advertisement you can have as a crypto, right? The best advertisement you can have is an exchange listing, is being listed on an exchange. That's an advertisement. Space Ape says, I wonder if HBAR not being in the top 10 cryptocurrencies is the biggest factor. Perhaps the landscape will change in ways we can't predict. Over the next few years, that brings liquidity without being in the top 10 list. The good news is we are seeing user and developer growth. And that's another big thing. Lehman and Mance and so many people in the ecosystem, have always said, Hedera is going to be a top 5 coin. We're still, where are we at in the ranks here? I haven't checked in way too long. So we're usually around number 30. Geez, we're at number 37 in market cap. So we've moved down considerably in the rankings. And I think that's kind of what we're all talking about is it can seem dumb, but websites like CoinMarketCap and different things like that is, the fact that you have to have this kind of exposure. It's very important to have that kind of exposure. Now, let's just continue on here with some last people. We need a really good game Drover.hbar says, yeah, and we've got, Lethos, we've got Doctor Who, we've got some good gaming use cases, but yeah, we need something to go live at scale. And let's see here, continuing on. I got a bunch of new comments. I have to go through these, but I'm happy to take the time here to kind of read through some of these responses and dive into some of these points, because it's a really huge conversation happening these days in the Hedera ecosystem that I don't think happens enough, is liquidity. I think that that's just a very, very important thing to keep in mind. Now, moving on, another story today